Good morning again, everybody. Welcome to this meeting, very important meeting in Tiania. And the spring weather is out there today, but everyone should be in a position to be able to get home okay. Big welcome to those in the public area today. Great to see some old faces and new, and obviously the staff. As we are in a new facility, I'll just remind everybody of some of the health and safety. So we have toilets just out through this door here, but if there's an overload there are other toilets in Bailey's. Evacuation, should there be any reason to evacuate, we go down the stairs around the corner here and meet just down on the assembly point. It's well marked. You're well aware, hopefully, of the earthquake drop cover hold. Phones, please have on silent. And as was said just at the start, these proceedings are being recorded. Apologies, there are no apologies to this meeting. No leave of absence. Are there any conflicts of interest in relation to this agenda? Appear to be. Item 4, public forum. We do have public forum this morning.
Your Worship, I'd like to make a point of order under these circumstances. I have knowledge that one of the speakers is also a candidate for the elections of the mayor, and we also have other candidates in the room as well. And also like to remind you that you're also a candidate, and therefore I think it would be inappropriate for you to be chairing this public forum section, and suggest that you vacate the chair and as your deputy take over this part of your part of the agenda.
Okay, I'm more than happy with that, Councillor. Happy for you to stay here, or do you want to come up the front?
No, I'll come up the front.
Yeah.
So it's probably thrown a bit of a curveball in there, but however I think it's the appropriate process to actually go through. I've been thinking about that during our early hours of this morning. Also to make sure that we have a playing field that certain steps actually would be taken. So first speaker, I believe, Kirsty, that you wish to introduce the council, so please come up front. And as you do, just like to remind you, please. Just remind you that you do have 10 minutes and to present your speech, and then of course there will be time for questioning. And I hope that this is not an election form. This is a council form. We're here to do council business. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm here because I want to formally record my deep concern at the shambles created by the delayed postal deliveries that threaten to undermine this election, and the failure by this council.
Point of order. Excuse me. Stop right there, please. That is not a responsibility of this council. That is the responsibility of the election office, and therefore I don't think that this is an appropriate forum to be discussing that. If you want to have a discussion about the elections and election forms of the process, then I suggest you're in the wrong forum. So if I ask you to refrain from that, please.
Okay, my concern is not around the postal deliveries, but the failure by the council to do everything in its power to mitigate this. Council's being legally responsible.
I'm going to interject you again. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you criticise this council. This is not, I'm not going to put up with that, Kirsty, I can assure you. This council has done everything it possibly can to adhere to and comply with its process and its delegations. So please, if you've got something to say about the process that refers to the postal addresses, voting, take it up with the election office.
So you're not going to let me say anything I have prepared here?
I don't know what you've got prepared. What I'm saying is that those two items that you've suggested, talked about already, I think are inappropriate to be discussed in this forum.
So you're okay with the fact that of the 7 officers that are receiving hand-delivered votes this week, only 3 are open between 9 and 5 Monday to Friday?
Once again, it is not something that we have control over. You need to understand that, Kirsty. It's not a responsibility of this council. It is a responsibility of the electorate.
I think you'll
Okay.
find that the council is the legal entity.
What I'm saying to you,
entity
take
legally
it up with
responsible.
the electoral office, all right? So if you've got anything else to say apart from that, please do so.
Well, actually, I don't think I'll bother.
Okay.
I'll read it.
That's entirely
Thank you.
your decision. All right, because I've given the Kirsty the opportunity to make any comments, do any of the other individuals that are standing for office want to make any comment? Certainly giving you their opportunity. There being none, then
If I may, just, it has been a difficult process across the nation, but the guts of it is that we need people to vote. And I'm pretty sure that all that has been done to allow that to happen has been done. But we just need the voter turnout to go up. It's nationally, it's still very, very low.
yep, that's certainly a concern. Don, did you raise your hand?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering if we can get a response from the Chief Executive about the number of offices that are open and perhaps why they
Can I
are
just
shut during this
yeah,
time.
can I just indicate to you that it's not a matter for debate at this juncture. Happy to enter that sort of discussion at a later date, but during a public forum, it's not a matter for a debate.
Well, I'm not debating, I was just
But it creates
wondering
debate.
a comment.
Any other comments? No, we'll go back to the original agenda. And Tom, I'll ask you to come back up to the table.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, the next item on the agenda, extraordinary or urgent items. I understand there aren't any. We'll then move directly into item 6, which are the confirmation of council minutes, page 6 to 17 of this agenda. I'm happy to move that they are a true and correct record. Second, Councillor Kramer. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Next item on the agenda is 7.1, natural features and landscapes, clean change 2, which I understand Margaret is going to address this matter, which under the current situation is a very, very important subject. Thank you.
Kia ora. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can indeed.
Thank you. Yeah, kia ora. Kia ora koutou. My report today relates to the natural features and landscapes plan change that we're progressing here in the planning department. Essentially, I'm seeking approval from you today to sort of adapt that plan change and refocus or target it to prioritise the issue of forestry. This approval is something that we require as part of the formal Schedule 1 process that we would do later on under the RMA for actually changing the district plan. And we need to be able to document any changes to any project scope so that we keep ourselves accountable and that there's the correct delegation in place for any changes that we make. So that's sort of the purpose of this report, just to give you a wee bit of a background around why we've chosen to target forestry. Essentially, since Council endorsed this plan change in June of 2020, we've found ourselves experiencing quite a raft of changes within that resource management space, as you'll be well aware of. So, for example, the RMA reform and all the range of new planning tools and documents that will be coming out of that changing legislative space. That in combination with national policy statements that are coming at us quite quickly, fast for a planning context. And these are being released that we also need to consider how they impact this plan change. So it would essentially be a bit remiss of us if we didn't really consider that our program, to check if our program of work was still fit for purpose, and to just make sure there's not any other mechanisms that might be coming sooner rather than later. And I'm thinking, for example, spatial planning work. If there's any other mechanisms that may be useful and better suited to dealing with some of the issues that would come out of this plan change. So that's one of the key reasons for refocusing. The other is, of course, that at the same time that all of this change is occurring around us in that resource management space, we also know that we have a shared concern around forestry, and that we know that our district plan just doesn't really deal with that adequately. So it's something that whilst we need to be efficient, we also need to take action on issues that we know are relatively immediate, and that we can't maybe wait for the changes that are coming within the RMA form to deal with those. So that's kind of the reason for that refocus. Just sitting, sorry, we're in another office space. In terms of what that refocusing might actually mean for, I guess, the current plan change as was endorsed back in 2020, it isn't really changing it too much, to be honest. It certainly doesn't really change the workload from the staff perspective, because it doesn't actually change the foundations of the plan change. The foundations of the plan change sit around the actual identification of our outstanding natural landscapes and our understanding of what kind of issues and activities actually impact those areas. So I guess irrespective of whether we decide to just look at forestry, we still need to know where our landscapes of value are throughout the rest of the district, and understand what issues are that may impact those areas, sorry. So in terms of what was originally endorsed in terms of the actual work program, we're still going to be undertaking the exercise of identifying outstanding areas and amending the district plan to take account of that. We're still going to be understanding through that identification process what activities actually affect these areas. And whilst we'll be dealing mainly with the issue of forestry, we'll still use that information that we get in the future with just at a different time and potentially a different mechanism. The positive is that we'll still end up managing these newly identified areas for a range of activities anyway, and not just forestry. And this is because we'll essentially roll over our existing landscape rule framework that we have currently and roll it over into those newly identified areas. So in essence, the rules that are applicable at the moment in kind of pockets of the district will become relevant to any newly identified areas. So by proxy, we still protect our outstanding natural landscapes. When we talk about prioritising forestry, so what that actually means, that is essentially that's where all our effort is going to go, all the research, all the understanding to get best practice. And that's where the effort goes to developing a rule framework to deal with forestry and to give us the control over the location and the types of forestry activities. At the moment, our existing landscape rules that do include an element of forestry, even if we were to roll them over to those newly identified areas and do what we're going to do with those other activities, that actually won't, it'll still limit our ability to manage them. And that's simply because our forestry rules just aren't quite strong enough. So hence you can see why that becomes something that we want to prioritise. So in essence, we're kind of trying to front foot what's coming with the RMA reform, be mindful of that and be resource efficient, but at the same time deal with an issue that we know is quite immediate, and we're actually just going to use the existing sort of legislative framework that we have as we know it today. So yeah, like I say, I'm just seeking your approval that is acceptable and that we can proceed in that direction. I'll take any partai. Thank you.
Marcus, is there anything you wish to add?
At this stage, thanks.
It's certainly a situation that has raised its head, and I'll use the term ugly head across New Zealand, and it's heading Southland in many parts of Southland right now, where a considerable amount of land has been used for what is defined as non-managed forests or carbon forests, and these are affecting not only what you see going to them, or what you may or may not see going to them, but what people cannot see in 5 or 10 years, because these trees are going to grow up around their properties. So we need to address it, in my view, but I'm more than happy to hear from councillors around this matter. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'm very concerned about the rapid influx of plantation forestry on our rural land at a time when food production for the world is under threat. Why are we allowing prime food producing land to be swallowed up by forestry, some of which is deemed plantation forestry that they never intend to harvest? It decimates our local communities, and I believe in the concept right tree, right place, and this is clearly at variance to that. Our productive farmland needs to be protected, and we've got to be quite firm about that.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan.
Your Worship, thank you. I endorse your comments, John. Thank you. There's been a lot of talk around this table about our forestry and what's happening in New Zealand, and I look at where I live, and I've discussed it with you up the Otapiri Gorge. 3,000 acres of too productive land has gone into forestry, and then a 5,000 acre farm was sold to forestry at the Waimea Valley. And I see, Margaret, you put in here that we protect Southland District's high country landscapes from inappropriate development, but it will also protect our productive land as well. I agree with John, it is decimating our communities, and I fully endorse a prioritised to forestry in our plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Whilst I agree with previous speakers, I'm quite concerned that why we're extending our time and resources on this subject when, in fact, we're going to have an RMA change which does include forestry, and that's going to be a government directive, which should, in fact, include some of these things because they've been put forward. I would be concerned that why are we doing this now?
We have to speak up for our own district, because there are other areas of New Zealand that are 50-50 on whether they accept or not accept. However, at the moment, just dealing with another situation at the moment where there's a possibility of a loss of a asset for Southland because it looks like it's going on productive land. But if they were to go and plant pine trees there, it would be okay. So it's got to the point of being ridiculous that we need to look at this. This non-managed forestry not only contaminates the landscape, it contaminates the land underneath it, but that's an argument to have. Managed forestry is a different situation. Councillor Scott, Councillor Menzies.
Your Worship, I might just add one more comment to that to answer Councillor Ford's question. Effectively, that the resource management reform could still be 8 to 10 years away, which allows significant amount of planting. So acting now and progressing this plan change forward means that we have the ability to consider the impact of mass afforestation sooner than the reform agenda would allow us.
Councillor Scott, Councillor Bowes, Councillor Menzies.
Thanks, Your Worship. Totally support what Councillor Douglas said, and thinking, like you mentioned, 5 to 10 years, but I'm thinking 25 years down the track when these trees get to the end of their useful life and they start falling over. What are these landowners going to do then? Are they going to walk away from it? And we're going to have a whole lot of unproductive land left without the forestry on. So I think totally support this. And I think we need to prevent it as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I support Councillor Douglas's concerns around productive land being swallowed up by these long-term carbon forests. But as far as the hill country goes, and Councillor Rudenthal, I think, differentiated between sort of the lowland productive land and the hill country. I know we've got some issues in the hill country around pine trees that are moving across the landscape. And I know you've referred to long-term forestry as being environmentally degrading, but maybe there are some parts of the province where forestry wouldn't necessarily be worse than what's happening now. Do you think that's...
Well, that's the debate we can have when we go through this, absolutely. And that's, you know, there's views, there's going to be views here, there's going to be views in the community, and that's a very good...
So okay, so that's going to be part of the process of working through this?
Correct, absolutely.
Correct. Through you, Your Worship, we're not looking to stop all afforestation in the region, purely looking to identify our jewels in our crown of our really outstanding landscapes and making sure that future generations still have the ability to connect with those places and spaces and still have the same level of appreciation. So that's certainly part of that conversation around where's the best location to restrict and where's the best location to enable and how that would look moving forward. So that's a full public process, so everyone's got the ability to engage in that conversation.
Including productive land, which Councillor Douglas pointed out. Yeah.
So in this process, you're identifying, or someone's identifying, outstanding natural landscapes across the district. Well, I think with most of it's outstanding natural landscape, but once that's identified and you're going to bring some rules in across the top of that, which is going to have an effect on what can be done with that land, is the public going to have the opportunity to have a say around what rules are brought in?
It'll be through a submission process. I'm pretty sure there'll be some submitters to that.
Correct. And through you, Your Worship, that's absolutely right. We're in the idea and the aim is that we will do a full engagement with our affected community before we even get anywhere near formal consultation and even that Schedule 1 process, which is the actual formal process under the RMA. So absolutely, this is not just oh, tomorrow it's now this. Absolutely, there'll be public and targeted communication with our community. Yeah.
Councillor Menzies, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Marcus. You've clarified because with the RMA changes, when they come into effect, if they do, presuming they will, that it could be 10 years before we see any benefits that in relation to this, and I fully support the plan change. I just wonder if you could provide some clarification on how long you think it might be before that plan change is effected.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Yes, we're hoping to start engaging with affected parties early next year. I do have an indicative time frame. It's flexible because nothing, things do flow and evolve, but having to give myself some sort of time frame. So the idea is that we would be looking to publicly notify this plan change August next year. And then from there, it starts, you have 2 years under the RMA to complete a plan change, but hopefully if we've done the front footing really well, if we've engaged properly and really talked and come up with good solutions, hopefully that tail end process, which is that formal plan change process, will run relatively smoothly and not take too long. So that's publicly notified approximately August next year.
Thank you. I just wanted to check, by having a focus on forestry for this plan change, are there any potential for us to be missing something else? I mean, if we're going to be looking at this over the next 2 years and then there's not likely to be another plan change to this effect until the next RMA stuff comes in 10 years, is there anything
on the horizon that's come up from consultation so far that you think is potentially going to get missed by us just focusing on forestry this time around?
Yeah. Through your worship. No, the idea is that it's like the identification of outstanding areas almost goes hand in hand with understanding what activities potentially can threaten those areas. So in theory, we should be filtering through and understanding what issues are potential problems, whilst we're not necessarily targeting those issues, for example, like dwellings or earthworks and things like that. We're still going to use that information in the future, and I'm thinking in terms of if a spatial plan comes sooner rather than later, that information is really relevant there. I'm not sure if there's anything else to add, but I hope that we don't miss anything. That's certainly our intention, to be really thorough and robust, and yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Vice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The activities that are likely to threaten certain areas, who decides what those activities are?
Thank you, through your worship. That kind of analysis is completed by a professional, so a landscape architect is hired to give us that information. We then test that as well. So that's not to say that they're the final say. It's just that under the RMA, a landscape architect is considered a professional expert to identify where landscapes are and potentially what can threaten them.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only other component, your worship, is the general public's process as well. They feed in as part of that Schedule 1 process. Everyone who is an interest in the topic has the ability to engage in that space and raise issues. So dealing with Councillor Owen and Councillor Byers' concerns, that public process certainly enables people to raise issues and for the consideration around the impact that it has on landscapes, and also the values associated with those places and spaces as well. So what are the areas that are significant, and what are the things we need to manage in that space? So there's certainly public has the interface of engaging in that process too.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Worship. Well, I think we're all very aware of the need to protect our very important landscapes and our productive soils, and this process and the public debate that will come out of that is important towards having a robust set of rules that manage that. And I think the timeliness of it is very important. So I'd be very happy to move the recommendation of option B.
Thank you. Well, before I ask for a seconder, Councillor Douglas, you have something to say?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So Marcus, do we have an updated budget for what this mapping is likely to cost, and does that fall on the ratepayer, or is that funded from central government?
Yeah, through you, your worship. So effectively, because the majority of the work is occurring on Margaret's time, it's already considered as part of existing budgets. So we're not anticipating any significant changes to budget forecasts in that sense. This work is part of our district plan cycle. So by default, council must review and make sure that our district plan remains current and adapts to evolving issues. And this forestry issue certainly falls into that space of being something that we need to make sure that we are aware of, and we're taking the necessary precautions and the lead from council around our prioritisation around these issues.
Just a follow-up question there. Like a year or so ago, we had a figure put in front of us of around $5 million to map these areas. And one of the constraining issues was actually finding enough landscape consultants to do the work. So, yeah, my question is more around what is it going to cost?
So effectively, the amount of cost between here and notifying the plan change isn't expected to be very much at all. once we get into that public plan change process, we notify rules. It depends on who submits, and if they appeal those decisions, that's when you start chewing up significant costs associated with conferencing and lawyers' fees and that sort of thing. So effectively between here and notification, we'll easily be within budget constraints and within existing staff time, few external consultants here and there, but I anticipate $70,000 in terms of existing operational costs between here and notification. Once we get into that notification space, it's going to be who knows where we end up depending on the appeals, but by having significant engagement at the front end of the process, socializing the issues and the need for action helps front load some of those issues and tease out some of the process, so that once we actually enter that formal space and the decisions and appeals, then we've worked through those issues as efficiently and effectively as we can.
I might just add to that through you, Your Worship. I think that was also that maybe the mapping of significant natural areas, because that was something that was absolutely that kind of budget, and also there was concern around, do we have enough people to do that actual mahi? So that may be what that reference was.
Yes, I believe it was.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Vice, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to come back to this for long-term forestry, carbon forestry. Could you explain who pays the carbon credits on these forests?
Through you, Worship, it's an open market. So, for example, landowner can put in forest and claim carbon credits. They go into the emissions trading scheme process. So the likes of Air New Zealand or any corporation that has a carbon positive balance sheet can look to offset their carbon profile by purchasing credits off someone who has those credits available. So it's a transaction between person that has forest to person that needs additional carbon credits to remain a neutral space. So free markets confined within the New Zealand confines. It's not international.
Okay, so it's not a taxpayer.
No, outside of our jurisdiction. Yeah.
Well, it would be in a jurisdiction if we were paying for it somehow.
Councillor Owen.
Thank you. I just ask that we could perhaps do some direct consultation with Great South on this matter, because I know that they're currently working on the updated energy strategy, and I'd hate to see things that are put in that are really prohibitive to perhaps big opportunities energy-wise for Southland. So, yeah, if you could just make sure that they get some special consultation through this. That's probably not the right word, but if we could be talking to them at least around opportunities that they're identifying.
Stakeholder. Thank you.
Okay, I think you've got a bit of an indication that we're very happy for you to proceed. Councillor Duffy has moved this recommendation. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Ravenclaw, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Look forward to hearing the work on this one.
Great. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 7.2, risk management quality update.
Morning, Your Worship, good morning, councillors. So the purpose of my report is to update council on status of its top strategic risks for the September quarter. Top risks were presented to the Finance Assurance Committee, and who stated their satisfaction they're being appropriately monitored and managed. Discussions with the committee did highlight some areas that the leadership team will review over the next quarter to make sure that we are describing risk trends appropriately. So the 12 risks that are reported on, 2 are under active watch this quarter, both the change in reform risk and relationships and reputation. So the impacts of central government reforms have been discussed with both committee and council in past reports. So I'll just I'll just note that staff will continue to monitor and participate where we're able to going forwards. Changes arising from elections bring both risk and opportunity this quarter. And while these are viewed as having short-term effect, you'll see in the report the mitigations that we currently have in place. These are very much linked to how we can continue to develop and support constructive and effective relationships, both internally and externally, moving forwards. So for councillors to note this quarter, the committee is recommending that the COVID-19 risk be removed from the strategic risk register. Council has effectively managed the situation to date, and we're aware that, whilst we're aware that the situation will continue to evolve and that monitoring will need to remain, the ongoing impacts of COVID on our strategic objectives are being successfully reported on elsewhere in the strategic risk register. So if Council choose to endorse this recommendation, the COVID response risk will be removed with immediate effect. So thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. And just note that we are here to talk about the D, E, and F, and G going forward. So any comments or questions around this matter? Fair to say it's a fair highlighting of finance insurance. I ask the councillor in the position to move. Second recommendation. Councillor Douglas moves, second Councillor Kramer. All those in favour? Against, carried. Thank you for your work around that, gentlemen. Next item on the agenda are the reports, operational matters. First one is 8.1, the Stewart Island Electricity Supply Authority, otherwise known as CSO. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, through your worship. I'll take the report as read and recap some pertinent points in relation to that. The Stewart Island Electricity Supply Authority provides for generation and distribution of power to the Stewart Island community. Generation of that power is reliant on confidence and supply of diesel to the wharf, Stewart Island businesses and Siasa. In mid-2022, global political pandemic influences affected the supply and demand for diesel. Those influences were and are of a magnitude that are outside the control of council. The long-term planned budgets set for the fuel supply for Siasa are set with the best information available in relation to current and future predicted fuel prices. Without additional funding, the current fuel budget for 22-23 is expected to be exhausted in November 22. At 31st of August 2022, Siasa had invested funds of 1.8 million that could be used to fund the remaining diesel costs. Siasa has been funding depreciation in the year it has incurred. The reserves are intended to be used for future asset replacement. The use of Siasa reserves through the invested funds does create potential risk that the potential future asset renewal programs are impacted with a decreased value. Therefore, we are seeking unbudgeted expenditure excuse me, through the report. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Open it for discussion.
Of course.
Councillor Ford.
Certainly, thank you. And I agree with some of your comments there, of course. The budget reserve, of course, for capital expenditure, and if we have a whack at that, well, you know, there's an infinite end to that. So I disapprove strongly of that. And I also believe we perhaps should have had a paper on our next direction. It's something like 12 years since we last had an energy workshop and nothing has happened. So whilst we've had all manner of things going on, nobody wants to know us. And certainly I've prompted and written to many MPs and government agencies and God knows what to no avail. So, you know, we've sort of dropped the ball on the whole thing as far as the renewal is concerned. And I'm quite concerned about that. The reserve will just disappear and we're still in the same place. So we need to know where we're going. And I would certainly disapprove of using reserves for that until we have a better idea what the alternatives are and how soon we can have them.
Situation's dire, there's no doubt about that. It's just, and I agree with you that the funds aren't going to be there forever. So, but we need to do our best to ensure that electricity is still supplied. I'll open the door. Councillor Menzies, Councillor Valencourt, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Through your worship. It's a question for you, Councillor Ford. So if we don't take the money from this reserve, where are we going to get it from?
Invariably, it'll come from there. But I just prove at the moment we haven't got a way forward. We can take the money now and another 6 months we find some more.
We're going to need more.
Yeah.
It's a real concern.
Need to know where you're going.
Councillor Menzies.
Thank you, Bishop. The urgency around this was reflected in the discussion with a representative from the government some 3 months ago. Obviously, Councillor Ford was raising concerns about the responsiveness over the past many years. How confident are we that the initial comments that were made to us are being escalated elsewhere within government, so that we're likely to hear of some options to address this matter reasonably quickly?
I did write to the MP and was referred to MB. I don't believe in my absence has been a reply yet. But the point I was making was that there had been fuel cost relief at the pump for petrol, there was road user relief for diesel, and there was passenger transport relief, none of which was available to residents or subscribers to CIASA. And in the fairness isn't quite the right word, but actually there should be some consideration given. And so I've been referred to MB, I believe it is, and we'll be following up on that.
It would be fair to say, Councillor Menzies, that all the advocacy that's occurred, even when Councillor Ford has fallen on deaf ears.
Oh, yeah.
To date.
So we have to change what we're doing to get a different response?
We have changed. Well, there's been changes of government, there's been changes of processes, there's been changes of reports. There's another report being put together by Stuart and the team, which hopefully will be enough to shake things up. But it's the hair pulling, isn't it, Bruce?
Oh, yes, and just further comment, you know, financial and environmental, we can't carry on.
No.
And no, I honestly believe that Transpower should be our provider. It's their them to do it, to make something work. So it's too big for this council and their community.
Councillor Douglas, Councillor Kramer, Councillor Byers.
Yeah, well, thank you, Worship. So it's really just a question for you, Bruce. Do the residents of the island understand the dire power situation that they're in?
Most definitely.
Yes, I would have expected that answer. So is there, amongst those locals over there, what is their solution?
Disconnect and run privately.
Oh, really?
That's what would happen. If the 45 cents in this report it was added, we would lose customers and the whole thing would then be a council liability.
That's been talked about in the last 2 or 3 years with going off grid.
So, for the past 10 years, I've been advocating for a cable across the strait. Now, that would have to be funded by government. How far down the track are we getting with that type of discussion?
It's being pushed aside in favour of other alternatives. However, the other alternatives have proved to be ineffective. The last report on that would be 2 years ago, and it was still to be a cable. However, no one's coming forward. And I can say in this room that Minister Parker, thank you, Minister Parker had no intention of supporting or paying for a cable. He was more interested in wind power, and that failed. We had to give some money back. It's 4 million put towards that project, and we ended up giving, I think, 3.5 back, something like that, wasn't it? Which we could have used quite well. And just to be clear, it's not the cable that is the cost, it's the infrastructure at the start and the end of the cable. Councillor Kramer.
Oh, my question has been answered, Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to explore a wee bit further this notion of the islanders being off grid, whether that be through wind or solar. I share Councillor Ford's concerns that these reserves are going to be gone
quickly,
like within a year, is it? And they're going to be gone on operating expenses, and we're going to be no further ahead. So I'm a bit concerned that we're pursuing, putting all our effort into finding someone to put this cable in, whereas we could perhaps be better off spending some money or some time looking at a way for the Stewart Islanders to be able to manage their own energy, their own energy needs. Because even if they get a cable across to the island, they're going to be plugged into a network that is already struggling. And it's going to struggle more with data centres.
They used to be self-sufficient with generators, but that wasn't appropriate, was it? Yes.
Well, you're no further ahead with generators because you're still using diesel. But there's other ways to generate power, and also, there's the ability for people to use less power, which is probably going to be a future for a few of us.
To answer your question, I understand that a number of users over there have looked at alternatives. I think we've got 5 or 6 alternatives over there out of a population of, I don't know how many houses are over there, but 5 properties.
450
properties. So 5 out of 450 properties have got an alternative.
Well, imagine if there was 450 properties out of 450 that were alternative, the problem would be solved, wouldn't it?
If they wanted to.
They're still grid connected, so they still draw power from the grid.
Yeah.
They're not solar.
Yeah, they're not off the grid. They just got alternative.
Drawing less.
Yes. Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Your Worship. Totally share the sentiment around the reserves being spent. It makes me very uncomfortable that we're using that level of reserves deemed for capital expenditure for operational, and they're going to get used up pretty quickly. But then we're stuck between a rock and a hard place as to the money's got to come from somewhere. But I just think with the advocacy route, if we look at what the government's doing at the moment with their carbon neutral by 2050, I did some calculations based on last year's usage of about 360,000 litres. Does that sound about right? So that's nearly 1 million kgs of CO2 being emitted. So I think if we can leverage off that approach that the government's focusing very heavily on and get them to put their money where their mouth is, and can you imagine them being able to say that they've saved 1 million kgs of carbon, and that's every year, so that's going to have a significant impact. So I think there are ways we can explore this a bit further down that road and hopefully get a solution, because we can't carry on where does the money come from next? There's only 400 and how many ratepayers there, and then the district can't pick that up.
Absolutely. And that has been part of the mix too, is the environmental effects.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, a very good point. We're looking to take a strategic approach on this that hinges off current government national strategic policy around environment. So that's looking towards minimising diesel use altogether. There is options, to your point, Councillor Byers, in relation to solar and wind. But overall, with those options, you're still going to need some form of diesel generation in order to create the resilience in case that wind doesn't occur or that solar effect doesn't generate the power. So we're focusing on what that national policy is and how we can use that to bring our solution in line with that. And therefore it becomes more of a strategic business case, more so than an economic business case. Also, although Councillor Byers, you've referenced residents on the island, what's really important is we take the opportunity to take a long-term strategic approach around how Stewart Island develops and evolves in terms of supplying, being the enabler for commercial industry to prosper and to have growth for residents, iwi to develop their businesses there and such like. So that pipeline of investment, if we call it that, is something that has to take a long-term view. And when we do that, we can see some of our options narrowing down to excluding diesel as much as possible.
Councillor Byers, sorry, just before Councillor Byers.
Through you, Mr. Chair, also, Stuart, you might just want to update video on what the decision was at the Stewart Island Community Board.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Ian. This paper was provided to Stewart Island community on Monday. They endorsed the expenditure with caution, admittedly, with caution in relation to using those reserves. And they've also endorsed a price change to try and recapture some of that cost. In relation to that price change, subject to our responsibility there, and any price change is to ensure that those affected by a price increase, that effect is minimised, and we manage that through appropriate, pragmatic and fit for purpose policy and procedures. And those are being reviewed to ensure that council supports our ratepayers in our community by managing the effect of raising that price.
That's up to Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Stuart. Nepal uses a lot of, you talked about this period where the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and how do you get across that as far as a household goes? Nepal uses a lot of micro hydro schemes, little ones like that can power villages. I wonder if there's opportunities to, if we were focused on becoming resilient, truly resilient, we would perhaps consider some of those things. And I'm not sure, is it the role of ratepayers or council to subsidy? You talk about commercial interests. Is it their role to be subsidising commercial interests on the island? So providing a,
It's probably not a point that I can comment too much more on that. An option to have a confidence supply to Stewart Island would need to include how we develop that proposal moving forward. We always have to take the time frame of that asset, that whole of life cost asset. So we're looking to who's going to be coming to us for a solution for power, and we want to be on the front foot with that in order to support any initiative that our ratepayer base is looking to have inside Stewart Island. So we do need to consider it, but it's only that consideration point. We'll get closer to understanding it a little bit more later on down the track. I'm sure we'll have more discussions in this forum to answer that, Councillor Byers.
Yeah, whether you're commercial or private, it's still needed. Councillor Fraser, Councillor Ford.
Through you, just wondering about that increase in price. How does that bring about? Is it still requiring reserves moving forward once that price is, or is that going to be kind of the equal point of meeting costs?
Yes, look, we have a range through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Fraser, we do have a range that we need to apply if we're going to use specifically a price change to address that cost, and that's upwards of 45 cents. That's going to evolve in some community consultation or communication in relation to what is appropriate and what can that customer base accept. And we're working on that at this stage. So we have the policy and procedure in place to move that price. It's finding what's fit and appropriate for the customers.
So that price rise will just stretch the reserve rather than
essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the price rise that's been indicated right now is only going to add about $28,000. It's indicated there that they're looking for 709,000 if it goes in the way that our line are indicated with diesel. So it's a tiny bit of a bucket.
Yeah.
That reserve effectively will be out within 2.5 to 3 years.
Councillor Ford, Councillor
Just in response to the suggestion of the business people subsidised, our businesses are a very important part of our system because they are the major consumers. They are in fact contributing the most money to the system at the moment. So if we didn't have the business community, the residential ratepayers would struggle even more. So it's important to have that business community, and they do struggle to be in business with those charges. So if we could master transpower and end of a piece of wire, that could change the business process in our community massively. And I'd have to add that the business belongs to SDC will become a liability. People walk.
Councillor Owen, Councillor Kramer.
Thank you. It's obvious that we need to move away from diesel, so anything that we're doing is just fiddling around with the interim, and I'm a little bit disappointed that we're at this point now without having, I think there was a previous meeting was discussed about having a report pulling together all the stuff that's been done before, because this council, individual councillors who have sat before have seen those come through, but I've never seen them all pulled together. So I've only seen, I think, the first the wind one that was looked at, but I know that like some of the stuff around micro hydro was looked at before, because I was working at Venture South and on energy stuff before. So it's just a bit disappointing that it's gotten to this point without us having a forward plan. So yeah, just would like to see what the forward plan is, have that backed up, putting it into the energy strategy for the region, and that's how we go for central government funding, is having it backed up by this is a regional approach for us. And I think it's just really important that we progress that, because this is not going to get any easier. There's going to be no more options soon but to put the price up fully for everyone. So, yeah.
To be clear on that, though, every time, and no disrespect to Minister Parker, but he wanted a report on wind, so that was developed, and yeah, so there's been 16.
18 and 19.
18 and 19 reports.
Yeah, but they've also,
decades.
yeah, but that's well, my point is that that's been going, all those investigations have been ongoing, and things change in the space quite quickly. So price and feasibility can, and now you've looked at the full range of options, some of them where it might have been private landowners or otherwise as barriers that might go actually the greater good, justifies some other sorts of action to progress some of these things. So I think it's important that they're all pulled back and tried to, and then come back as soon as possible, really, to because I'd hate the next council to be having the same report again with another unbudgeted expenditure and still not have that full picture in front of them of what the pathway forward is. So, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Karen here. Could we just perhaps also be cognizant of the fact that there is a work going on right now of us talking to people like the Infrastructure Commission, and we have employed a consultant to we've supplied a lot of the information from the previous reports, and with the guidance from the Infrastructure Commission about putting a business case together. And we've already had some workshops, and Bruce, you were at that workshop, and we are moving with speed with that to get a case to central government that will press the buttons that need to be pushed in regard to what would be the best case scenario. So while Stuart talks about a strategic long-term view, he's right in that, but we are moving very quickly to get a business case together right now. And as I say, we're getting a lot of support and guidance from the Infrastructure Commission. So I think it's important that council know that and know that it is being treated urgently, and we're expecting to have that business case, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, within the next couple of months, 2 to 3 months, ready to go.
That's correct, Karen. In fact, the first draft is due this week.
Yeah.
Circulating that with our key internal team.
And that's pulling all those other bits and pieces together.
Yes. So everything that's been done to date is also being reviewed and then looking forward. And as I say, we're very grateful for the support that we've had and assistance from the Infrastructure Commission that has helped us to get to where we are now, and hopefully putting together a case that does make sense and pushes the buttons for central government.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Kramer, Councillor Menzies.
Thank you, Your Worship, for you. It's clear that the community board has supported the application that's been made as an interim arrangement. They certainly identified that we need to treat it with caution. But the community board has supported. We need to be supporting the community and its businesses. Without those businesses there, that community would just start flying, just won't grow. We need to have that there. It's not about subsidising it. It's about providing them with assurance that we can supply the power so they can actually have a business there and operate it there and have confidence that they can continue to actually do that. There's a need to review the strategy. And so what Karen just identified to us, that is actually happening, it's occurring. And by the sound of it, that's a very positive pathway forward. Dealing with the Infrastructure Commission, developing a business case, and we've already got the first draft out. So it indicates to me that there is that pathway, there is a need to support this community, and I'm prepared to move the recommendation, so Your Worship.
Thank you. Before I ask for speaking, we've got Councillor Menzies, Councillor Price.
Thank you. Again, just reflecting the level of concern and urgency around this topic. And for, I guess, the new council coming in, I would like to see that we are making a decision around a regular report to each Services and Assets Committee, if that's still in place with the new council, on this matter, because we can hear quite a lot today about what's going on in the background, but councillors may not be necessarily aware of that, and that also provides the opportunity to our ratepayers, but particularly the Stewart Islanders, to hear about that progress as well, or lack of progress, and also bring it to the attention, national attention, as it starts to escalate, as it will, if we keep doing what we're doing now.
Just if I may, Your Worship, just to assist there, there's already an agenda item planned for the Services and Asset Committee that is on the agenda on every meeting. That's already been raised and it's already happening. So I would trust that it will continue to happen.
It's certainly been given priority.
It has indeed.
Well, purely just recently because of the price.
Yeah. Councillor Byers.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want Karen could clarify the business case. Is that just for the cable, or is it?
Stuart's probably the better person to talk to, but definitely not. That may be one of the options that when our experts and have looked at all of the information that's available, but my understanding is that that it may or may not include a whole lot of options, and a cable might be one of them. Am I right there, Stuart?
That's correct, Karen. We're not at that final option yet. There's a lot to consider. We'll put that through an options assessment, and we'll come to that option reasonably quickly, I would imagine.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Kramer. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dudley, second. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Councillor Ford.
Can I just clarify, is that moving including the E as well?
Yeah, sorry, that's in the recommendations up there, which includes the community board's recommendations.
Yep.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your work on that, Stuart. Thank you to reading report number 19. 8.2, draft unaudited annual report. Please speak to us.
We're socially distancing.
Around the
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors. I will take this report as read. The purpose of this report is for the current council to review and provide feedback on the draft unaudited 2021-2022 annual report that was approved for release to audit from the Finance and Assurance Committee on the 28th September 22. The 21-22 annual report will be formally adopted by the new council subsequent to the local body elections in October. The annual report compares and comments on the performance of council against budget and operating targets set in year one of the long-term plan 21-31. The development of council's annual report is nearing completion, and the draft as at the date of the report is attached in attachment 1. However, the document is still a working draft, and any content that is yet to be finalised is shown in the yellow highlighting. Council is being asked to review and provide feedback on the draft unaudited annual report that was presented to and endorsed by the Finance and Insurance Committee meeting the released audit. Generally, council staff work towards getting the annual report adopted before the local body elections, given that the report relates to activities undertaken while it was in council. However, due to the significant resourcing shortages of the audit sector, the audit of council's annual report could not occur in this time. Council has also received notification from the Office of Auditor General of the proposed change to the auditor of the annual report, with Audit New Zealand looking to be replaced by Deloitte. This change is a result of the resourcing challenges in Audit New Zealand, who will focus on more complex audits. At the time of writing this report, Council's auditors have yet to confirm the planned start date. Legislation was passed last year extending the adoption timeframe by 2 months to 31st of December 22. And in the interim, council staff have continued to develop the annual report in line with our existing timelines and seeking the endorsement of the draft report at this meeting for the release of audit when they arrive on site. The Finance and Insurance Committee considered the draft annual report at last week's meeting and resolved the following: that they agreed to endorse the draft unaudited annual report for the year ended 30 June 22, including any amendments agreed at the meeting. They approved the release of the draft unaudited annual report for audit once any agreed recommendations had been incorporated. And they agreed to delegate authority to the Chief Executive to approve any further amendments to the draft unaudited annual report for the year end 30 June 22, subsequent to the meeting and prior to providing a draft to Council's auditors. So quick status update of the report. At the date of this report, the annual report was subsequently complete, with just a few small matters outstanding, such as a message from the Mayor and Chief Executive, completion of a small number of the activity statement commentaries, and finalisation of council-controlled organisation information, completion of a number of minor notes and components of the notes of the financial statement, a review of disclosures against the 2021 Audit New Zealand model financial statements, preparation and consolidation of Milford Community Trust accounts, and subsequent preparation of the group 2021-22 actuals to be included in the financial statements, the financial overview, and the design of the full annual report document, and also the completion and design of the summary document. And as I've said, any content in the draft annual report, which is yet to be finalised, is in yellow highlighting. Just a quick summary of the performance result and the financials. Of the 58 service performance targets, 41 or 71% were achieved, 16 or 28% were not achieved, with 1% not being measured. In general, throughout the report, there was a variety of reasons why performance targets were not achieved, and these reasons are outlined in more detail in the performance tables within the activity statements in the annual report. Of the 254 projects, overall 74 or 29% were completed, 151 or 60% were in progress, 16 or 6% were not started, with 2 being deferred and 11 being deleted out. So financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the Tier 1 public benefit entity accounting standards. The accounting policies for the year ended 30 June 22 were approved by the Finance and Assurance Committee meeting in June 22. Total revenue for council was 96.6 million, which was 6.5 million over budget, which was primarily due to grants being received for the 3 ward stimulus, 3.9 million, and the predator-free Rekiura, 1 million, as well as increased forestry harvest income of 3.2 million. This was offset by lower investment interest of 2 million and a decrease in the forestry revaluation of 0.8 million. Expenditure was not 95.8 million, which was 4.6 above budget as a result of higher than anticipated infrastructure revaluations, which increased council's depreciation expenditure by 4.8 million, predominantly in relating to 3 waters. This was offset by lower employee-related costs of 0.9 million, largely as a result of staff vacancies, and lower interest costs of 0.8 million due to the lower than anticipated external borrowings. The gain on assets at fair value was 375.4 million, which was 322.2 million more than budget, as a result of the roading and 3 waters revaluations being higher than budgeted. The increase in asset revaluations is a reflection of the increasing contract rates and price indices. Additionally, at 30 June 22, council had $16.8 million of external borrowings with the LGFA, or Local Government Funding Agency, which is due to be repaid in 2035 and 2036. This was the first year that council has borrowed externally from the LGFA following the review of the investments and borrowing strategy as part of the LTP. And just the key issues that wanted to address was, of course, we still have the confirmation of the audit and audit dates, and then additionally the consolidation of the Milford Community Trust numbers into the accounts, which staff are currently preparing at this stage. The information is yet to be included, however, these are considered to be insignificant and will not have a material impact change on council's draft report number 2. And additionally, internal reserves had a closing balance of $42.5 million, which was higher than the $34.8 million, which is the main factor contributing to this was the deferral project sort of expenditure, which was expected to be funded from reserves. Additionally, the district operations reserve closed with a balance of 3.4 million. Of this, 1 million is committed to fund the carry forward costs, which were approved by council on the 21st of September, and 325,000 is committed for the 22-23 as part of the annual plan. Additionally, internal loans 55.1 million, with council ended up with 5 million of new internal loans compared to 18.16 million that was budgeted. We'll take any questions that.
Thank you, Bree, for that briefing. So it puts everything into perspective. So thank you. Ian, is there anything you wish to?
No, I think the key point with this, of course, it has gone through Finance and Assurance, this report. As you would be aware, we generally try to get our annual report, of course, completed within this triennium by this council, but due to audit resources, of course, that's not possible. So that's what's caused the delay. But what we are doing, and you'll see it in my following report, is we're just trying to give some assurance to the next council that you guys have looked over it and that you're comfortable with where it's actually sitting, because of course that council is going to be signing this document off. So the key for us here is we don't normally do it, but we've brought that to you today so that you are aware of it.
So councillors, for discussion, Councillor Menzies, Councillor Cromer.
Thank you, Bishop. Are you aware, Ian, of how many other councils throughout New Zealand are in this position within the whole to approve this prior to the?
I'm not aware in totality, but I do know there are a number. The chair, Mr. Robinson, has indicated that he's in contact with a number of councils that are in a similar boat. Of course, we do remember that there was an extension to the audit, which was 31st of December last year, and that is extended for this year. We have been also advised by, as Ms. Lepper has said, advised by the Office of the Auditor General that auditor change for us from Audit New Zealand through to Deloitte. In discussions with Deloitte, they have indicated that they won't be looking to complete the audit until March next year.
Right.
So we weren't told that by the Office of the Auditor General, so we're just going back and having a discussion with them about the implications of that. In the past, what tends to happen is that it goes to Parliament because it hasn't met its statutory timelines. Our expectation, of course, would be that it would be clearly indicated that it has nothing to do with ourselves. But we don't know as of this point if they've had any extension to that timeline or what they're putting in place for that. But we do know that they are well aware at this point that our audit would not have been completed.
And that this council has done everything in its power to conclude this at the end of this training, because last year with the extension, it didn't have the same impact as it does this time, because we're asking the new council to.
And unfortunately, I don't think all councils would ever be able to complete anyway by the 31st of October, because simply the resourcing every 3 years would be such that they just wouldn't be able to meet those standards anyway. But and it does have an impact for us because we're going to have a new auditor. And we're also going to be in a very busy time because at the same time we're doing our annual plan, we'll be planning for our LTP and we're putting in a new financial system. So the resourcing of having new auditors, because, you know, in the past Audit New Zealand have been able to undertake the audit from a distance. We've been able to give them work papers and they've been able to manage it. With new auditors, they will need to be on the ground to talk with us. And that's something Deloitte's not had a conversation and said that's probably the best approach because it'll probably be, you know, you just don't get the same interactions when you're doing it from a distance. So it's going to add on totally a lot of extra work that we just hadn't planned on at a time we didn't need it.
And actioning that request from Audit New Zealand will add extra cost to our audit process as well, or not?
No, at this stage we're in the final year of our letter. So we usually undertake a 3-year letter with Audit New Zealand, which indicates what the price of those audits will be for those 3 years. Deloitte will undertake the audit in line with that letter, so that won't charge us anything extra, even though, and we're probably in a benefit because in the first year they'll incur significant extra costs to get up to date, but that will not be charged for either. They are prepared to bear that. Having said that, I'm sure that'll be reflective of any future negotiations that occur. So.
Got a very good question, Councillor Menzies, but I'm assure you our team have been ready to go. It's just been. Councillor Cramer.
Through your worship. Unfortunately, I couldn't remain through the entire finance committee meeting for a week due to boredom, but I'm not sure whether this has been asked, and that was regards to, we've got Deloitte as our internal auditors. Now we also have our audit, Deloitte doing our annual audit as well. Is there a issue, a conflict? How's that being managed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, very good question, and one that we have been, because when Office of the Auditor General initially approached us in regards to that, we said, well, we've just renewed our contract with Deloitte for a further 2 years, and we are most happy with the services they've provided to date, and we would like that to maintain. At the time, the Office of the Auditor General indicated to me that they would review the services, and as long as they were activities that were undertaken that would normally be expected to be undertaken as part of the audit, then it would be okay. But that would not extend to the point whether they were making any recommendations about approaches we should be taking going forward of any findings they had done or providing any resource to undertake those. Having said that, when we had Deloitte's in the room, they said, I don't know if it's going to be quite as easy as that. And in fact, it's our understanding that the Office of the Auditor General has requested copies of all our internal audits to review them and to have a look at what was on there and to, I think, just to get an understanding. But Deloitte's have indicated, I think we need to specifically go back, tell them what the internal audits are and the extent of those audits, and get permission. He said in any other situation outside of the government environment, it would be no problem. But Office of the Auditor General tend to have right side versus the left
Correct.
side in their approach.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, it's still not clear then.
No.
Carry on.
Any further, Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So Ian, we've got 42.5 million in reserves and we've got borrowings of 16.8. Now, I know we're looking at putting some of our reserves into a balanced fund, but just at a high level, what is the interest rate we're getting on reserves versus what is the interest rate we're paying on our borrowings?
So currently in the LTP, and Bree will correct me if I'm wrong here, currently in the LTP, we budgeted to give reserves 2%, and we have continued to give 2%. Of course, we have not followed through on our investment and liability policy direction at this point in time. So what that has effectively meant is, of course, our interest has gone down. But having said that, if we had invested, I don't think we would have had anywhere near the returns we were budgeted anyway. So we would be, I would say, at this point in a better position for not having invested our funds. In regards to the borrowings that we're currently paying, it's about 3.3.
Yes, I think.
Yeah, 3.3 that we've got fixed until 2035 and 2036.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so that's
3.3 versus 2, but I understand there's a timing issue there and all.
So I think that the important thing, of course, to note was originally we had budgeted in this plan to put an extra 300,000 off to our district operations reserve as a result of receiving monies at 4.4.
Yes.
Yep, receiving monies at 4.4, paying out 700,000 to offset rates. Yep, and putting 300,000 aside. Of course, that hasn't happened. And what we've actually ended up doing is drawing down 300,000 from the district operations reserve to mitigate the. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to happen again in this year. So in this budgeting round that we're just currently in, so what year are we in, Bree? 22, 23? All the years are merging on me these days. So in 22, 23, we're going to be in a similar position where we're going to be at least looking probably for 600,000 to come out of the district ops reserve. And that's why Bree clearly indicated that right now we've got a reasonable balance in that district ops reserve that's uncommitted. But it's still something to really pay attention to. It's something for this new council, because if you remember rightly, where we left the investment discussion was we had appointed 2 managers, which being Westpac and Milford, but we still had to come back and make the decision about how much we were going to invest and when. And so I've currently got our investment advisors, PwC, preparing a report up to the new council that will indicate to them what they think that the council needs to do, but providing them with some information to make their decision or not. It's a council decision.
Thank you, Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bree and Anne. The Finance and Assurance Committee was mentioned before. It was a good discussion, and I felt that what we brought, what I think pretty much everyone agreed on, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, that rates were at a level where it was becoming unaffordable for quite a few people. And as far as the cost of the council maintaining services, these costs were increasing. The cost of doing the capital projects was increasing quite markedly. The value of infrastructure has had a big markup, which means that the cost of allowing for depreciation is also increasing. And of course, the cost of debt is increasing. So I felt that at that meeting, we pretty much all agreed that this council won't be able to do business as usual in the years ahead. Something's going to have to change.
through you, Mr. Chair, this is of course the annual report. So that discussion that you're just having will be part of our annual plan discussions with the new council. Yeah, so we at this point in time, all we're indicating is where we're at, and the points that you've raised are valid. Costs are increasing, you know, things are becoming a lot dearer than they potentially were. However, there's that old adage that things are never going to be ever cheaper than they probably are today. And the great thing, I guess, whether you can call it great or not, is when you borrow, you have fixed that value. So all you're doing is paying the interest cost on that. And we're in a fortunate position that we can get good rates and we can fix those for good periods of time, which we cannot do at a banking environment. So we've got some security around there.
So you're not wrong, and I'm not going to correct you because it is
That's not like you.
It is a conversation that is going forward, Councillor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just follow up on that. Yes, you're quite right that you can fix those interest rates. We can fix them for a long period of time, but also, and we could debate this, but we've accepted the liability of a lot of other councils around the country who are heavily in debt. So we do have to, I think, acknowledge that the risks of that borrowing facility have increased the risk, you know, on the ratepayer here. Just one question. The open spaces, 5.4 million over the next few years. Is that government fund? Does that come from government?
No,
that's ratepayers. Okay.
This budget is included within our budgets.
They were discussions we had within council. Any other comments or questions around this matter? I'm happy to move the recommendations as they are. Councillor Sender. Councillor Douglas, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the annual report. Management representation leader, Ian. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Your Worship, councillors. So just further to the last report that has been presented, I'm just here to talk about the annual report management representation letter. So as I indicated to you previously, this is basically just giving some assurance to the new council that this council has looked at the results to date, and should it have been able to sign the management representation letter that we always do to the auditors before we get our audit report, you potentially would have done that. Okay? And that management representation letter is just giving representation that we've complied with our statutory requirements, that we've done due diligence over our systems and our processes, and that we're comfortable with the approach and the results that have been prepared within our annual report. And you'll see within the report, the management team and associated people who are responsible have gone down the management letter and indicated in there how or where there are any concerns or not, which there hasn't been. So based on that, if I just take you quickly down the resolutions. So this, like I said, has gone to Finance and Assurance. And the chair, Mr. Robinson, just expanded out those resolutions just to take it as a step-by-step for the new council in reflection. Okay, so the first one is very much just drawing to the new council's attention that it wasn't anything other than the fact that there was audit resourcing requirements that have stopped us from actually adopting this report or considering this at this stage. That we want to advise that new council that they've considered the representations that they would have made, and that copy is attached to this report, and that notes that the F&A committee has considered and would have indicated the signing of the management report had it been able to do that at that stage. So basically, then it's also just to conclude the new council that the final letter also may include other matters subsequent to the audit. So that's all this thing is doing, is just providing. Mr. Robinson indicated that he has been present at a council before where the new mayor refused to take it on, saying that wasn't. So this is just an assurance thing. It's just managing some risk potentially and providing that.
Thank you. And here was another very good discussion, and I'm sure that the chair's comments were all taken on board. Very much so, Mr. Robinson's comments. Any questions or comments in regards to this? Not being so, then we have a councillor can move the recommendation, 8.3. Councillor Keys, seconded Councillor Menzies. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Right. There's a big word in here. Delegations over the interim, the interim.
Good afternoon, your worship councillors.
Somebody pronounce
So
that.
this report proposes that delegations are put in place over the election period. So candidates who are elected come into office on the day after official election results are declared, which is likely to be around 14 October. And this is the day that current elected members vacate office. And new councillors can't act as a member until they've made the necessary declaration at the inaugural meeting, which is likely to be held on 2 November 2022. So it can be legally delegated to the chief executive, but that the chief executive only exercises delegation in consultation with the mayor-elect and after assessing that the matter cannot reasonably wait to the first meeting of council. A resolution has been included in the report that if the CE exercises this delegation over the time period, it would be reported on at the first council meeting. And there's also a resolution that if anything arises requiring significant political input, then an extraordinary meeting would be held and councillors would be sworn in rather than the CE exercising delegation. So this delegation is quite common practice across councils over this time period. As council may have some matters that require a hearings commissioner to be in place under the RMA, a resolution is also proposed that councillors Duffy and Keast be appointed to act together as commissioners to undertake the responsibilities of a hearings committee over this time. Unless council resolves otherwise, all committees, subcommittees and joint committees are discharged when the new council comes into office. Staff are aware that the Creative Communities Committee and the District Licensing Committee may still have to operate over this period. So a recommendation in this report outlines that these committees will continue to exist. Fiona, in my request, has made a slight amendment to the recommendations in this report. I referred to the Creative Communities Funding Group as a subcommittee instead of a committee, so she's just fixing that for me. So the recommendation will say committee. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on this matter, and the recommendations are on page 306.
Thank you, Robin. Any comments or questions in regards to this item? Councillor Menzies, Councillor Owen.
Thank you. We should, just to clarify with those committees that still exist, Creative Communities and the district licensing, how are the decisions made there?
They're joint committees and they've got representatives from council on them, so they can still operate in that time period. Oh, sorry, Louise, did you?
Through you, your worship, the Creative Communities Community Committee is not a council committee as such. It's not linked to council.
Right.
So it makes its own decisions. It has representative councillors on the committee, but it's not. But it doesn't follow the council procedure of minutes and everything like that. It's a community committee. So
it doesn't require councillor representation in order to make a decision.
No.
And what about the alcohol licensing committee?
For your worship, that's a joint committee, so it would come out of effect over that time period unless we keep it in effect.
So why are we, if it's out of effect during that time, why is it continuing?
They still will have business matters that they need to deal with over that time period.
And there's no councillors represented on that?
Yes, there are council representatives.
Through you, to answer your question, Christine, there's a Creative New Zealand meeting next week actually for a funding round application. So we are meeting and going forward. I don't get a vote, I just chair it, but I can step back if required and put someone else in their place.
I'm just clarifying the councillor's responsibility under there. If the councillor's not elected, but if it doesn't need a councillor,
don't vote.
But sorry, I just wasn't clear about the district licensing committee and who, so is that Julie, Councillor Keaston, Councillor Duffy will take that responsibility?
Councillor Duffy.
If I may, I chair the district licensing committee, and so there's ongoing relicensing of managers, but specifically special licenses, which are quite short duration between the decision required and the event happening. So the staff go through those and the inspector does a report, and I need to sign a approval of when that circumstance warrants. So that's the level of involvement. Yeah. during that period.
Yes. but
Which is
during that
ongoing.
period, it's
the same as what's been happening ever since it was appointed to.
Yes, I was just trying to clarify the legality around that, given that even though councillors may come in, such as councillor Keith and councillor Duffy are coming in, there are, we no longer continue as councillors from the 14th on.
So through you, Your Worship, it's my understanding that the District Licence Committee of the Joint Committee has members from ICC and STC, and that any joint committee would cease to be in effect from the date that the official election results are announced. So that in order for that committee to operate, we need to keep it in effect, and that our council representatives are still be on the committee.
There's nothing on the calendar at this stage that council, as you say, it's for daily, for daily.
A license come through this morning.
Yeah, understand totally what you're saying, it's just.
Councillor Owen, Councillor Radical.
I had similar questions which have been answered. Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. Just so clarification, so the committees, unless we move this now, the committees go by the wayside until they are sworn in again. Because this is why we do this, is why we've got this in here now,
So we can
so that it does continue.
So we can keep those two committees.
So it's just the formality of actually making sure the committee keeps going.
Doesn't fall. With both of you as representation. Anything else through the chief executive? Councillor Radical has moved that with the change, Councillor Radical and H from subcommittee to committee. Seconder. Councillor Fraser. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you for that. The next item on the agenda is the valedictories. And I note that lunch is 12:30. And I was going to maybe wait 20 minutes for lunch, but I'm just aware that Tony's here. So those that wish to do the valedictories, quite happy to do so in the time frame. And if we go over, we have a late lunch that might be 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, half an hour later than proposed. Why don't we do one?
I just got, Kira just got.
Oh, yeah, so Dan George is waiting for June, and you're probably waiting for.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Just letting you know when you come back.
So I'm happy to adjourn the meeting while we have a lunch break and then come back for valedictories. So how about we adjourn till 1:20?
Yeah.
1 o'clock? No, 1:30.
Then it's sending messages to June too.
Right. So let's 1:30. 1:30 for valedictories. Cool. Okay, we're going back out live again. Thank you everyone for while we took that time out, but we're back into the council meeting and item 9.2 are the valedictories of our retiring councillors. And those retiring today are Councillor John Douglas, Councillor Bruce Ford, Councillor George Harper, Councillor Abel Kramer and Councillor Karen Owen. And I'm going to ask Councillor Douglas to come forward first. Councillor Douglas was elected in October 2007.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors and staff. I mean, I've thought about this is be one of the more difficult things I believe that I've had to do. I mean, how does one sum up in a few short words 15 years in local government? I thought I would start with where the journey began. I was home one day and these two local gentlemen showed up at my door and said, we'd like to talk to you about council, and invited them in. And they said, we'd like you to stand for council. And I said, I didn't think there was a vacancy. And they said, well, no, there's not, but we want you to stand anyway. And so in those days, it was one councillor, one ward, and we went through that process and Julie got elected. In those early days, it was a very steep learning curve, lots of acronyms and abbreviations and things. And then you went through a period believing that you could change the world. But the reality in politics, I believe, is a little bit like being a tugboat trying to turn around the Queen Mary. And when you push on your own, you don't get very far. But when you get 2 or 3 other tugboats to align with you, you can make meaningful change. And I think a feature of this council has always been that although from time to time we have held differing views, at the end of the day, there has been a huge amount of respect across the table between ourselves, with staff, with our community. And, you know, always hang on to that. Being a councillor, you are constantly reminded that you in the community are the face of council. And people will come up to you from all walks of life, expecting you to know everything about everything. And sometimes and occasionally you can bluff your way through. And this is one little story that might reflect that. I was at a Lions meeting in Lumsden in Mossburn, and a local farmer came up to me and said, look, my road is in just a hell of a mess. Do you think you could do something about it? I said, yeah, okay, I'll see what I can do. And I'll, you know, make a call or two tomorrow. At lunchtime the next day, the phone goes, and it's this farmer, Rob was his name, not Rob Scott. Gee, thanks very much. The grader was through here at 10:30 and he's done a wonderful job. The truth was that I hadn't done anything. And it was just captured in the normal magnet cycle. Did I come clean? Not initially, but at the next Lions meeting, I believe I did. And then the other day, I went into Bracken Hall, and 2 of the staff came to me with worried looks on their faces. We're out of water. We're out of water. We can't operate around it. I said, it's okay. I'll make a phone call, and rang our water team. And yes, they were aware of it, and yes, the water would be back on in a few hours. And then day before yesterday, I went in there for a coffee, and same staff, they just came to me with beams on their faces. Oh, thank you. It was like I got the water back on. And I got a free coffee out of it, which reminds me, do I have to declare that? Okay. I suppose in life, we tend to remember the very good and also the very bad. And with this next story, I'll let you be the judge. This incident happened in my first term. Me, Frana Cardno, was in the chair. Oh, Louise, I should warn you that you're included in this story as well. Anyway, it involved our dog control team. They'd been called to Riverton to deal with a dog attack.
When you go to it.
And as a result of their investigation, they classified the owner's dog as dangerous. So as such, the dog had to be muzzled in public. it was desexed, a whole lot of other restrictions placed upon it. Well, this couple objected to this classification, and as such, they were entitled to come to council and speak to their objection. So they arrived at council, and it was held in front of full council. Now, we had one or two of these before, and I firmly believe that the press during the deliberations were out of the room, but in this one, that was not the case. However, this couple arrived, and I know we're not supposed to judge the book by its cover, but these were a little rough around the edges, and piercings and whatever. And then they got up to speak, and the woman in particular, she sort of started off and berated our staff, saying, "You fellas don't know what you're talking about. My dog wouldn't hurt a fly," all this sort of thing. Anyway, they went through it all. Then they exited chambers, and the doors were closed. And Mayor Frana looked across at me and said, "Well, Councillor Douglas, what do you think we should do here?" "Your worship, it's not the dog we need to muzzle." Well, the look on her face. And then I looked where she was looking, and straight at the press. And this man, he was just writing furiously. I stuttered something about, "Can I withdraw I wish to withdraw the remark." Frana said, "No, I couldn't." And anyway, this guy got up. Remember this, Louise? Out of chamber. He was still writing as he went through the door. In hot pursuit, though, was Louise. And Louise, I'm not sure what you said or what you did there, but thank you. Did not appear in the Southland Times the next day. The cycle trial has to receive a mention. And all I can say is that after a very difficult gestation, we are now reaping the rewards of a well-managed but energetic teenager. The formation of the trust will consolidate the gains and add value to the cycling network. And I wish Rob and the Waikaya crew all the best in their efforts getting their trail underway over there. And later this month, I'm taking a group of my mates from schools, from Lincoln, from Rugby, and we're going to ride from Kingston to Five Rivers. And we'll take in the scenery and the history and a few beers at the end of it. So yeah, it's being used, and yeah, I believe it's got huge potential. June couldn't be with us. There's snow on the other side of the hill, but you can't do this job without the support of your partner. And yeah, I just want to thank June in her absence, for holding the fort at home, shifting sheep when I wasn't there, and yeah, helping me with some IT issues from time to time. So yeah, very, very much appreciate what she has done. Today, though, was a sad day. There's no other way around it. To say goodbye to council and all you guys on the council, on staff. Yes, Cameron, you're included in that. But I depart with many fond memories and few regrets. So I wish the incoming council all the very best, and yeah, Godspeed. Oh,
thanks, John. Thanks, thank you. Cheers. I remember that, Councillor. Councillor Bruce Ford.
Right. I can talk from here, can't I?
I don't know.
Thank you, everybody, for persevering with my time at council. I've written up a few milestones during my time in local government, and I apologise to Ava and Gary that they've probably heard it before at the community board, because it's something of a similar nature. During the mid-70s, Stewart Island was undergoing major upgrade of roading and construction of our first airstrip. That was meant it meant that many approvals were required from all sorts of agencies, and certainly government agencies as far as DOC are concerned, and we could manage them better in those days. And there was some land swaps went on. So that was part of an initiation in the early 70s. Because I did begin in 1977 as the Stewart Island County Council and appointed deputy chair on that occasion. 1980, I was re-elected Stewart Island County Council and appointed chair. So that was in the thick of it. And during this term, I and my team had responsibility for a radio repeater on Mount Rakihua and a VHF repeater that was used for marine and some other communications. And the terrain was such that some of the government agencies, maritime and dock, said, "You won't work, you can't do it." So we did it anyway. It worked very, very well. In the 1980s, the fight for reticulate electricity in the system really got underway, involving 1 million for reticulation, a further 1 million for the building of a powerhouse. The fight really required a great deal of lobbying, and from while I was familiar with the layout of the beehive, as I was with our town hall, and thanks to our major funder, the Rural Reticulation Authority rather, they were being disbanded, so we got all the money they had left in the kitty, which is about 800 grand. And there are photographs of me getting a cheque from the Minister on that. So we were very pleased with that. 800 grand didn't do it all. It cost a whole lot more than that. So it cost 2 million. And as county chairman of the day, I signed the cheque, so I'm responsible for all this right here this morning. But I won't give up. 1980, 89, these years were crowned with events. Firstly, when I was appointed to United Council, which is a predecessor for the Regional Council, it consisted of representatives of Southland County Council, Wallace County Council, Winton Council, Gore Council, and Stewart Island. Worked alongside names as iconic in Southland's history as Sir Erskine Beaumont, Pete Paul, Peter White, some of those. During this time, we progressed regional planning, including that of establishing Big Glory salmon farming, because in those days, the Big Glory was a place where the yachts would go, and it was a favourite place because there was no noise, no people. It's changed to that. So that was part of that planning. It was an experiment to see how that would work. And that experiment has proved to be very valuable for our community. Something like 4,000 tonnes of salmon and up to 10,000 tonnes of mussels per year. So a very important part of our region. I was a member of a small committee that progressed the amalgamation of Lands and Survey and the Forest Service at Stewart Island. In those days, we had 2 departments and they were sort of fighting amongst themselves, and that was good because they kept giving us things and they were finding money from somewhere. So that was the predecessor of Department of Conservation. They didn't want to be joined together, but as that work went on, the staff moved on and the replacement staff came in as a joint Department of Conservation. I was also deeply involved in all the senior staff interviews for the new Southland District Council at the time of amalgamation, 89. So there was a whole creative people lined up for the jobs because of all the councils coming together. They all need the job. It's a lot of work and not everybody was happy with it. Come 89, I had to go back to work. I didn't stand for council at that point in time. But 1992, I was re-elected to Stewart Island Community Board as chair. So I couldn't keep out the fingers out of it. Meanwhile, the Hall Committee had convened at the Stewart Island Hall Committee, typical Stewart Island fashion, being told we couldn't have a new hall. We didn't stop us building one. We could do it, but stuff that up. Thanks to late Al Street and his team with a can-do attitude, planning was well advanced. My own involvement a couple of years later did include me doing some shifts when they were working on milling timber and some of the materials that were used in the hall. But majority of my work had been a driver for Island Transport, where we carted all the timber for dry stacking on the site where the current hall is, and there was quite a lot of time went into that. There were any other projects I could point to. Another one I've been mixed up with was our new museum, which we're very proud to have. It's something like $4 million in that. that had some of our money came from Helen Clark at National Park at the time. So that was part of that progress. As council and team, we had pushed for the funding, all manner of things. We did get a share of that. And there were some council staff that told me we couldn't do it, so we did it. However, the highlight of the next few years for me, a very important step in the history of our community, was the visitor levy legislation and the benefits of funding. I have a copy of a letter signed by me addressed to Wellington-based government agencies and dated 1979 as Stuart Old County Chair. That letter shows that it was obviously very much under discussion for some time prior to 79. The visitor levy legislation required massive persistence and time of energy put into that. Can only marvel now. We had some pretty marvellous people backing me, pushing me, not least the various community boards, Southland District Mayor Frana and Dave Adamson. We had Wayne Herdigan and his wife Rebecca. They had done all the paperwork for that project, and there was massive amounts. And they were to be thanked for getting that past the government agencies because they knew how government worked. What have we got here? Our MP at the time, Eric Roy, was our champion. Nail-biting times, often frustrating, because he put that through as a private member's bill. And we had to take our chances and wait for that to be drawn as a possibility. And of course, lots of people were looking at us because we were very new in doing visitor levies. Nobody else did it. They were told it can't be done, and of course we've done it. Throughout all these years, we've had to work. Local politics doesn't pay in dollars very well. I had children to educate, a wife and family affairs to take care of, South Sea Hotel to run, and in due course I took them any job that was going. Of course, there were headaches, anxieties, fears throughout the whole course of my career. But that's life. In that respect, not being on council won't reduce the headaches. So we're now talking about remodeling the kitchen. However, she'll probably deserve a new kitchen, as I owe considerable thanks to Sue for her patience and secretarial nous and the uncanny ability to read my writing and type it into legible narration. There have been two other women in my life recently, and I must thank Kirsten Hicks, our community lady that does our paperwork. Regular visits to her office, even daily, sometimes several times a day. They're keeping me in bureaucratic order. The other person I want to thank is our community partnership leader, Karen Purdue. Karen tells it like it is. It's kept me in my place, but has backed up Stuart on every step of the way. Staff like Kirsten and Karen are rare and precious, and council should value them accordingly. Thank you, Kirsten and Karen. Hope she's watching. Now, whilst I'm standing down from office, doesn't mean I'm not standing back. I'll have more time than ever to keep tabs on things and push from the outside where I feel it may be to advance the community good. The community board has already elected me and another retiring board member to sit on a SAISA liaison committee on the electricity. So it's my baby and we're not going away. So that was intended to keep the system rolling until we get new board members up to speed, because Stuart Island is a by-election that comes up. We've got board members that'll be catching up. So there's many years I've spent with many amazing teams of Islanders and Southlanders during this part of my career. Yes, it's full of frustration and being impatient doesn't help. It's time consuming, but from memory, I've managed to attend all council meetings during my 5 terms, except one. I was forced to go by ferry, and of all things, on arrival, discovered the Bluff Road was closed with a fatal crash. So I hung around Bluff all day like this, and it's not appropriate in Bluff. Despite the time committed requirement of councillors, I would encourage all our young people to give it a go. It can be one of the most fulfilling roles they will ever have. It has certainly been one of mine. Done my best for my community and council, but it's over to my successors and bureaucracy to continue to improve our situation. So to all council, I would say, despite all the bureaucratic flim-flam, never forget, don't believe them when they say you can't do it, because you can do it with patience, perseverance, commitment and enthusiasm. Prove that. Thank you. Thank you.
No, very good. And Bruce has been with us October 2007. You didn't mention that, Bruce.
Same as John.
Yeah. Councillor George Harper, first elected to South District Council October 2004.
Yes. Well, my little comments probably won't take nearly as long as John and Bruce, but yeah. We'll see what happens. Yeah, we've been in here, there, so yeah. As the 2022 local body elections draw to a climax, that is my time as a district councillor. I look forward to being totally retired, as June and myself are very family orientated and are relishing the free time we have remaining to spend with them. I have enjoyed my 18 years as a councillor, in particular, the early parts of my term when both community boards and CDAs were operating. The camaraderie with people from outside your local area was great, and we all learned a lot from each other. Dual day meetings were quite common then, and occasionally we spent time overnighting with other district councillors, which we all enjoyed very much. And sometimes we'd go around the whole area and have a night here and a night there. And I recall one incident when we were down at Topanui Way somewhere, meant to be staying the night, and I had a community board meeting at Tuanapuri, so I vanished back home. But while I was away, I believe somebody stole a bottle of rum from our dear mayor back in those days and consumed it. Councillor Bailey, ex-Councillor Bailey, do you know about that? Not a thing. I was chair of the bursaries and scholarship committee for 2 years. And this gave the elected committee a very good insight to the value of our younger students and the potential that we had in our region. In many cases, they were difficult choices to make in awarding the scholarships. I recall after one meeting of this committee when we as a panel were discussing our own periods at college or high school, and it was noted that the whole three of us were in full-time employment at the age of 15. Common sense and the experience of working on the coalface seen us through, I believe. And incidentally, the whole three of us are in this room. I think Councillor Paul Duffy and ex-Councillor Bailey would know something about that too.
You'll deny it.
I was also involved in the Forestry Committee for 3 terms and enjoyed doing work that was associated with my background. On the local scene, I've seen a heck of a change in the Western Southland area with the demise of the forestry and all that sort of thing. But then along came the Humphreys track, which is taking a little bit of the slack out of it and showing a good sign of a good indication of progress for the future of Tuanapuri. We've also seen the upgrading of toilets to the bridge, Monkey Island and Colic Bay, and good to see some new facilities taking place. Over the years, I've noticed a large decline in the ability of the ratepayer elected boards to have serious input into the affairs of the local region facilities. Health and safety are an issue to contend with at all levels, along with other dreams such as traffic control. Having done a lot of travel in recent months, it seems we need detours around the road cones to progress forward. Traffic control is an absolute joke and a very poorly contested item of legislation by our so-called LGNZ. Traffic control and safety in the urban areas, yes, but in the regions, some serious modifications are needed. It is reaching crisis point when it comes to economics regarding lawn mowing, contract gardening, and many other small domestic chores in the regions. Cost of our ratepayers are escalating beyond the point of affordability in most cases. When they travel to the cities, they use toilets and other facilities as coffee shops or cafe bars, which are covered by the purchases. How is it that they also pay for the many numerous toilets that we build around the region and the user pays nothing for either the cleaning or maintenance? Time for some serious rethink, I believe. I also believe that the major service providers need to be involved in serious price quotations for their contract services, thus providing a platform for our new rural contractors to be part of building our own facilities in our own areas. The risk factor is another over-dramatised issue. Why get out of bed? Now that raises another question. After reading many of the prospective candidates' files, these matters will all be under serious scrutiny in the immediate future. Well, team, I wish you all well for a successful new term, one of which can be judged in 3 years, when you can see the regions flourish. Never have so many opportunities been presented to the Southland region. With commercial savvy and using commercial knowledge, the Southland District Council may just be able to build a new headquarters in a region that supports the Southland District Council networks. Before I hang up, a special thanks to all the partners who have done the hard yards at home while the council partner was going about their allotted duties. Cheers, thanks, and good luck to all. That was actually my little bit, but I've got a wee piece here from the local community that gave to me a wee story. Not, it doesn't control anything to do with the council, but it was this little story went something like this. It was, what is politics? A little boy goes to his dad and asks, what is politics? Dad says, well, son, let me try to explain it this way. I am the head of the family, so call me the Prime Minister. Your mother is the administrator of the money, so we call her the government. We are here to take care of your needs, so we will call you the people. The nanny, we will consider her the working class, and your baby brother, we will call him the future. Now think about this and see if it makes sense. So the little boy goes off to bed. He hears his baby brother crying, so he gets up to check on him. He finds that the baby has severely spoiled his napkins. So the little boy goes to his parents' room and finds his mother asleep. Not wanting to wake her, he goes to the nanny's room. Finding the door locked, he peeks at the keyhole and sees his father in bed with the nanny. He gives up and goes back to bed. The next morning, the little boy says to his father, Dad, I think I understand the concept of politics now. The father says, good son, tell me in your own words what you think politics are all about. The little boy replies, the Prime Minister is screwing the working class while the government is sound asleep. The people are being ignored and the future is in deep shit. You want it?
No, it's not there. Councillor Abel Kramer, elected in February 2015. Floor is yours.
I'm not sure you complete that one.
You've written out again.
No, wow, your worship there, fellow councillors, previous councillors in the back there, and partners, chief executive and staff. Never too sure what to say in these sort of circumstances, so it's a bit of the past and it's a bit about the future. A bit like Councillor Douglas, I was never intending to stand for a local council or local politics. I was approached in early 2015 by the previous Mara Wyoming Award councillor who was retiring and mid during a training, and sought to see whether or not I would be interested in being a councillor. So next thing you know, over the next few days, I get a lot of phone calls and working down the township here and bumping into a lot of people saying that I think you should actually stand. So prior to making a decision, I visited the previous mayor, Rana Karno, and to discuss council and how it operated, what the key issues were that were being faced by council, and I also caught up with Councillor Douglas at the same time, pulled into his home and had a bit of a chat with him. Nancy Fran was a bundle full of knowledge and was keen to share her experience all about the council. However, she did indicate to me that there were a couple of really, really good candidates that she knew of, and I would enjoy the process, but I shouldn't get my hopes up. In all probabilities, I would probably get third or fourth out of the 4 candidates. So anyway, I think the rest is history because I'm here and they are not. So after being elected to council, I did go and see Fran. I had another couple of coffees with her and a very, very good chat. I had an interesting start to council. I think it may have been about my 3rd meeting, and I was rather embarrassed. in the hotel, got dressed, suit on, tie on, looking good. Checked the mirror to make sure it wasn't lying. Anyway, I noticed there was something wrong with my suit. So straight to the council, made a beeline for me and Tom and advised them that I had a bit of an embarrassing situation. And I said, look, I'm wearing jeans. He was like, don't worry about that. That's okay. So that's right. So anyway, just before he draws the council to order, he says, I've got an announcement to make. One of my councillors have actually put on a bit of weight and he's put his pants. He's wearing jeans. So I duly stood up and said, yeah, it was me. And I just had to take it on the chin. But there was a pretty important lesson to be learned. Just be mindful of what you say to them. I think it's about the same time I was asked to meet with the then Chief Executive, Steve Ruru, and me and Tom, and to discuss a couple of significant issues that were facing the council, one being around the Mount Cycle Trail and the other one was the general wastewater. Steve and Gary requested I take a bit of a lead role, noting my previous experience in managing projects and the like. I'm not going to go into great detail on these two projects, except to say that both are now great assets, and certainly endorse John's comments as well, that around the Mountain Cycle Trail is a good asset for the district, and it can only grow. But what it did do, it provided an opportunity for council to set up a finance and assurance committee that identified some of the issues that council had with its policies, procedures, and how accountability was being monitored. And I certainly enjoyed my first 3 years as chair of the Finance and Risk Committee. It provided significant challenges, but also rewarding as it improved council financial project management practices, but it also improved our credibility back into Wellington as well. I think that was a very important aspect. And of course, we'll see the town wastewater project tomorrow when we go and visit the plant here in Charnow, and also the disposal field at the Kepler block. And, that'll be an interesting session for everybody. But I've got to confess though, during my due diligence, I was trying to learn more about poo ponds and wastewater, that I arranged to go to Auckland. I said to Maxine, and I have to confess to her, and she knows all about this, but at the time I said, let's go to Auckland before we leave it too. And she thought, that'd be nice. And she said, yeah, so there we go. So anyway, in the plane about 25,000 feet, a lot of people around. I said, by the way, I've got to go and see a couple of poo ponds, wastewater plants. She just goes, what? I said, yeah. I said, doing a bit of research. So anyway, my credit card got a bit of a hiding that week because I wasn't around very much. But it all worked out pretty well. So it was a wee lesson learned. I'd also like to thank Anne Robertson and her finance team for their support, not only during my term as finance chair, but also as my term as a council. And I certainly worked through a number of financial spreadsheets and financial analysis. But I've got to admit, the first time I walked into Anne's office, I got a bit of a fright. I opened the door, walked in, and was sitting there. In the corner was this metal statue. It's of metal. This guy's got a metal hat on, helmet on, and he's got a pistol. And it's aiming right at me. And I looked at Anne, I looked at this thing, and she looks at me, she goes, yeah, you want to be careful because it can be loaded. So I knew then that I was going to get on pretty well with Anne. It's not very often you see across financial buff with a real good sense of humour. So Anne, thank you. The Finance Assurance Committee under the chairmanship of Bruce continues to provide a most valuable and significant contribution to governance and management, plus to our internal and external auditors. It provides additional credibility when engaging with government agencies. So I think it's a vital role. I wish to thank the Service and Asset Committee members for their involvement. The last 3 years I've chaired that. I've had a lot of support, and we've had some significant challenges over the years. Our bridge repairs and replacements program, 3 waters, wastewater plants upgrades, floods that impact on our road and coastal infrastructure and on our communities. COVID's had a significant impact. Escalating costs in our roading and maintenance work, the Golden Bay Wharf, CSA, recycling contracts, earthquake buildings, winter library, and it goes on and on. So for the last few years, this council has been extremely busy with attending to those sort of things. It just indicates how busy we've really been, and I'd like to acknowledge Matt, who's unfortunately not here, but certainly Nick, you as well, and Hartley and their staff for all the support and assistance they've provided me over the years, both as a chair, but also as a council. I'm going to miss the 8 a.m. morning Zoom sessions with Matt and Nick, discussing numerous strategic asset issues, projects, financials, forward planning of council services, and of course we had a lot of banter as well at the same time. So management of our finances, infrastructure, policies, regulatory requirements are of significant importance to council, staff and our communities. However, we must never forget the people factor. Our communities, the human side of our decisions are just as important. There have been times that difficult and unfavourable decisions have been made, particularly around the council team. We've completed the representation review, and that was throughout our whole district. We've done a health check on our communities. Council has a perfect opportunity to fully implement the review recommendations. It's a new triennium, there's new community boards, there's a sprinkler of new councils, and that provides a perfect opportunity to look at that. Just want to talk about the town area. Back in 2020, we had a major flood and flood. Of course, that had a significant impact on this tourist town. Government seemed to ignore Fiordland and Tiana during the early stages, and it wasn't until we continued to keep pressure on the minister to acknowledge that we did actually exist. And over a period of time, we managed to get them down here and met with myself and a number of business people, and all of a sudden we were recognised within the media, and we were also recognised in central government, and we actually got some money out of them as well. Been enjoying attending a number of national and district and local meetings as you do. I think I've just about got around every community board, and I have to confess, except down Paul and Julie's areas. But certainly attended the Republic of Waikaya, Lumsden, Mosman, Te Winter and Stewart Island. And of course, as I say, I never got down to one part of the district. I've been asked on numerous occasions of late, what will I not miss? Well, I'm not going to miss all the reading of all the endless agendas, the numerous phone calls and evenings. As a councillor, you receive some strange calls, and the main calls are relevant to you as a councillor, but you do get the odd strange one. Recently, I got a phone call from a local saying there's a dead pig down the lakefront, and you need to sort it out. Okay, well, that's an interesting phone call. It's way down by the Upaka River, and there was apparently a dead pig. So anyway, went down there, and we actually got it sorted. So you just never know what sort of phone calls you actually go to get. I won't miss the bureaucracy within the local government. The early morning starts, travelling to Invercargill, getting late home. I've worked out that on average I was doing about 45,000 kilometres a year, slightly less than the last 2 years. It's been an absolute privilege being part of Southland District, and as I've stated in the past, it is a privilege to be a councillor and to be in council chambers representing Southland District. I've enjoyed working with the councillors, discussing numerous items professionally. It's non-personalised, it's focused, and it's progressive. And after all, we're here for our communities. We should acknowledge the Southland District staff for all their support and assistance over the time that I've been. Me, Tom, it's been an interesting 3 years as your deputy. One could hardly call it business as usual, but considering all these and the other challenges that we've had. Thank you for your support. It's been a pleasure. Cameron, I'd also like to thank you and acknowledge your support in our numerous discussions. I wish you all the very best. See, one thing you're not going to get your job. Councillors, mayors who are seeking re-election, I wish you to stay on. All the very best for the exciting times ahead. There will be some coloured and troubled flowing waters to navigate through. There's no refueling. It's been enjoyable. And to Maxine, thank you for your support. Answering phone calls at times that haven't been a pleasure. It's been hasn't been easy for you, a lot of time spent on your own during times of my numerous trips away from home, and even when I am at home, busy reading agendas, reports, emails, and being on the phone. Got some great memories. It's time to get my boat back out and do some fishing, and I'm looking forward to taking Maxine on our adventures. Cheers. Thank you.
So Karen Owen, first elected October 2019.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa. My speech will be very short, as was my term on council, but I'd just like to think probably the enjoyable thing for me has been being around a group of diverse people who are really passionate about their community. That has been a highlight for me. I reflected on a list of things that I wrote when I was first standing, of things that I wanted to achieve or see done, and there's probably only about 2 or 3 out of 4 pages of stuff, 2 or 3 items that have been ticked off. So it takes a long time for your goals to align with what council's priorities are and things. So sometimes it's just a matter of luck, and sometimes there's strategy involved. But for me personally, I think some of the things that I'm passionate about, I'll find I can do more on them outside of council rather than inside. So you'll still be seeing this face. I'll just be showing up for LTP submission times and things like that. So yeah, thank you all for your support and lots of emotional support, sometimes stressed, you know, what is going on? That happens afterwards. But yeah, thank you all. It's been enjoyable.
Promised me you're coming back in 3 years anyway. Thank you, everybody. It is a time of thanks, and it's a big thanks to those that are stepping out voluntarily, and possibly those that may step out involuntarily after the weekend. But we have able summed it up. Over the last this triennium has been tough. I know it's been tough on staff, it's been tough on elected members, but the big thing's been tough on our communities as well. And we have to take that into consideration with everything we do. And we do that, and we have had to make those tough decisions. So on behalf of my role, a big thank you to the support around this table over the last 3 years in particular. But over the 9 years, it's been massive. Paul was my first deputy, and Abel was the second. You can't do without your deputy. The conversations you have with the chief executive and myself, and then I share it with the deputy. It's got to have that shoulder to lean on. So it's a big thank you. So, are there any other councillors wish to make any comments before I record this valedictories?
I'd just like to say all the very best to the retiring councillors, and I've got to know them over a long period of time now, and we've been working in confined spaces at meetings, etc., and you sort of really, you know, get to make friendships through that time, and I respect you all, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to work together. And I'm learning from this what a valedictory speech is like for when I do my one next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And that's a very valid point, actually, Paul, because we've got 3 outstanding retired councillors that have taken the time to come up here today. It's just fantastic. It shows that we have got a very good council, and it is respected nationally. So good stuff. So on that note, sorry, can I just, yes, absolutely, if you wouldn't mind.
It's not a valedictory, I hope. Just on behalf of the leadership team and the wider staff, can I just pass on our thanks to you as a council? It's actually been an extraordinary council to work with. And actually, you know, you've all talked about just how many challenges there have been, but in the nearly 2 years that I've been with you, they have been most difficult, challenging, extraordinary 2 years that I think anyone's faced in local government. So to go into complete lockdown, to emerge again, to go into a sort of a hybrid operating system, everything that we did, that you did, was challenged and pushed around, and yet the genuine kindness and spirit with which you've all engaged with governing Southland has been extraordinary, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of the team. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Okay. Item 9.2, then I'm happy to move that we receive the valedictories. Councillor Menzies, all those in favour? Against? Thank you. That ends the open section of this meeting. We're now going to go into public excluded. And because of the matter that's on the item, I'm going to ask all the staff to vacate as well. So it's just the councillors and Fiona and the chief executive in the room.